This is the introduction to the Carmudgeon Show, part of the Haggerty Podcast Network.
Yes.
Presented by Jason Cammisa.
Who?
You.
Oh, and
May
Derek
I give you a
Tam-Scott.
mirror? Derek Tam-Scott, that's me. This episode has a variety of topics. I guess the general thematic common string is big Luxo coupes. We talk about 3 different Luxo coupes. We also talk about having a car that is very obviously the wrong car for the mission, which is backroads ass hauling, until it's actually not the wrong car for the mission. It's actually exactly the right car for the mission, which surprised all of us, even those of us who are some of the most pronounced Mercedes-Benz. Oh, I've given it away. It's a Mercedes.
Oh, stop it. They can't know that we're talking about a Sacco era Benz already. Wait, it's in the thumbnail. Yes. So we talk about that. We also do a V12 update, not updating our episode, but just a sort of update
personal
on the
V12
V12s.
access or not access.
Somebody got a little jealous and was like, I have to have a V12 too.
I have to set myself on fire.
Yes, well, you did that.
I did do that, yes.
With a 12-cylinder. That outranks just normally driving.
That's a much better way to set yourself on fire than like a peasant would.
4-cylinder fires are just so day class A. Don't forget that in addition to being part of the Haggerty Podcast Network, if you would like to help support this kind of content, please consider joining the Haggerty Drivers Club, which includes unlimited flatbed towing for all of your classic vehicles, access to our valuation tools, also discounts
on events and tickets and
I'm going to
whatnot.
feign that I can't remember this. I can't remember. Tell the rest of them.
And the subscription to our award-winning magazine.
Yes, there you go. There's a link in the description below. Also, Derek is going to clap.
Or try.
You're getting really good at that.
Yes.
After
finally, 148
episodes or something.
And here we are. Yeah. All right, time for the jingle. Deet, deet. Ready? Welcome back from the song.
Thank you. Such a good song, isn't it? It's a catchy song.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
We have a script.
Does that mean we have a sponsor?
We have a sponsor.
How is the script? Is it any good?
I have not read it yet. I would like to read it live.
Shall we? Oh no.
Are you host A or host B?
I don't know. I don't think I want to be either host.
Tough.
Shall we just include the highlights instead of being host A or host B?
I was given a script.
Are you gonna read this?
This episode of the Carmudgeon Show is brought to you by Viper Chairs. If you're like us,
so good.
Yeah, if you're like us, you do a lot of wrenching on your assorted vehicles. True, and you have a back-breaking roller stool in your garage or workshop that, well, quite frankly, sucks. Yeah, I mean, I kind of do. I'm mostly just lying on the ground.
Luxurious to have a chair. Period.
Right.
I'm used to kind of sitting on the floor.
Yeah, lying on my back like a hooker. Which is why we've excited Viper Chairs is sponsoring this episode of the Carmudgeon Show.
In the script.
No, let me make this very clear to you, Viper Chairs. That is not in the script. No one here is a hooker. Viper Chairs are not hookers.
No, you said like a hooker, not as a hooker. Right? This is the difference between a simile and a metaphor.
Okay. We have to stay on script,
let's get
which
to
is
the
why we're
highlights of
excited.
the
Viper
chairs.
Chairs is sponsoring this episode of the Carmudgeon Show because they sent us a few chairs to try out, which are extremely comfortable, by the way. They were comfortable when we were sat on them in Amelia. We are not sitting on them here yet because they're in a
they
box
just arrived.
right there.
Which means that if we continue to do this, if they haven't decided to fire us on the basis of this script read already, then we can have a progression of sharing our observations.
Why would they fire us when I'm about to say? And B, they're borderline indestruct.
So this is where I go, whoa.
Yes.
Maybe don't say that. We have to go read the literature in the box to confirm it before you say it. Well, I'm sure we could find some way to destruct them if we put
I
them
think we
in a
should
hydraulic
should we
press. We should do the
destruct?
Pontiac endurance test.
Yeah, but you get what I mean. They're really overbuilt, which means we're gonna have these for. I'm not good at scripts. We're gonna have these for a long time.
And don't forget, besides being ergonomic and supportive, they're made right here in America as well. That is actually a material advantage.
If that's something that's important to you, I'm supposed to pose that question.
Oh. Well, who doesn't value ergonomics?
No, made in America.
Okay, the script leaves something to be desired. But bottom line is they're ergonomic and comfortable. And this episode is brought to you by Viper Chairs. There's a link in the description. Use the code Haggerty and you'll get $50 off of your order. Is that?
I think
we sort of suitably butchered.
I think we suitably butchered that, but yes, thank you to
all
Viper Chairs
the
for
important
supporting.
points were gotten across, and we
Most
can provide
importantly-
our real world observations. You should do an icons episode, or at least a revelation.
And icons on Viper chairs.
Yes, on the chair.
Or just go check them out online and save $50. Hey, everyone wins. All right. In other news,
you dropped in the fact that you purchased a V12 powered automobile.
that wasn't supposed to be the
Oh, that wasn't the lead. Sorry. Let's start again. We'll start with the script read again. Also, no, we're not.
Yeah, so I did buy an 850 CSI.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you. I was outed first by Driving While Awesome, the other podcast, and so I had no choice but to come clean. I bought it. I'm doing research for Revelations, and
Very in-depth first-hand research, so much so that you bought one.
I have not bought that many cars for Revelations. Put it this way: this is the first one I bought during the research process.
So the research must have been very compelling.
I've always wanted an 850. So you guys have heard about my friend Mike. He and I both thought that the 850, the E31 was the best looking BMW ever made. Back in the day, we went to Germany in 2002. We did like a 2-week-long...
During which you purchased your wagon that you still own?
June of 2002. We did like I think it was 10 days or something, car shopping excursion. He was going to buy a 126 coupe, which is appropriate for this episode.
As we will soon see.
We're supposed to be talking about. And he bought a 500 SEC, and I'm like, oh, great, we're done. He was like, no, misery loves company. You're buying something too. Mm-hmm. So I bought the E30 wagon. That was now 22 years ago. This coming month. Oh my God.
This month, because it's now June.
It is now June. Yes. So yeah, I bought the E30 wagon, and then 2 years later, we decided to reprise this like vacation. He lived in Florida. I lived, where did I live? In Pittsburgh at the time. So we rendezvoused in Frankfurt, took the train to Cologne, and we were in the taxi on the way back on the way to my office that I worked for a German company at the time, to pick up the keys for the apartment, the company apartment that we were going to crash in. And he was going to buy a 140 coupe. He wanted an Elefantenarsch, as they call it in German, elephant ass. Like he wants just a big fat ass SEC. And we're in the taxi and jet lagged and the whole thing. And I just hear, halt, stop. And the guy slams on the brakes, and Mike runs out of the car before it's even stopped and like sprints across the road into this shitbox roach lot, as we call it, like shitbox lot. And I'm like, oh fuck! So I had to pay here. Yeah, I had to pay the guy and take our luggage out and drag it over to the thing. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, did you not see that? There's a silver 850 in the back, and I'm like, and long story short, he had eagle eyes and he could see this silver 850 with a 2-tone interior, and that's what he bought. Like we didn't even make it to the hotel, nothing. So the whole trip was
everybody
ruined.
Could go home.
Yeah. So the entire trip was ruined because now what's the point of car shopping when you've already bought one? But we did drive this 850. It was an 850 automatic with like 200 and something thousand kilometers on it. And we drove it all over Germany, and it was just, they drive
very economical.
No.
For Shell oil.
But very slow. And so when he passed away, he had 20 something cars. I don't remember how many, lost track of that, but he had written at some point for Jason on the title of that car. And it was very difficult for me not to take the car, but I couldn't. First, it was not imported correctly. There was a problem with the VIN. It was a mechanical disaster because it had been sitting for so many years.
And an automatic.
And it was an automatic.
250,000 kilometers.
Yeah. And it just wasn't what I wanted. And it was very difficult, especially in the emotional state when you're clearing out your best friend's estate, to leave it. And I thought, okay, I will have an 850 at some point, or an E31, I should say, but it will be a manual and it will be a CSI. And we can get into the reasons of CSI in a later episode when I'm
a Revelations episode.
But it's an M car. The CSI is actually an M car. It's a WBS VIN. It's registered in the German registration. It actually said the model number says M8/E. It's an M8. And
not to be confused with the M8.
The M8 prototype, yes, of which there was one. But so I was looking at borrowing a couple CSIs, and I just started doing all my research. And I'm like, you know what? The right one will present itself. And I found the right one and just bought it, which is a little bit, from a journalistic perspective, not the correct thing to do, to buy a car right before you do an episode on it that's celebrating it. But
it would be even less right thing to do it right before you sell it.
That's true. That's true. I don't plan on selling it. Who knows what? Look, I can't keep all these cars forever, but I really wanted a CSI. I now have one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, it was, in fact, David E. that said everyone owes it to themselves to have a V12. I wound up looking that up after that last episode. But there's something I didn't realize about the CSI that is part of the reason why I wanted it so badly. I'm a whore, period.
Hooker.
No, like a hooker.
Like a hooker.
But I'm a
as
whore. In addition to I'm a whore, period, I'm a whore for short gearing. And I was thinking about this over the weekend. Like, why does that matter? And the reason it matters is, for example, when the 7-speed Aston Martin V12 Vantage S came out, I was so in love with the fact that it was geared so short for a V12. So, for example, it did 66 miles an hour in second gear, 44 in first, which doesn't sound that short unless you live in Porsche land where everything does 80 miles an hour. Except that at the time, a Z06 did 66 miles an hour in first gear. And what I love and what I think we all love about about manuals is cylinder count and the build of revs, right? 12 cylinders are going to get a higher pitch than a 4-cylinder, which is what makes them so interesting. But what you're looking for is that repeated build. Ba, ba, ba. You don't get that when you have very long gear ratios, right? So the trip to 66 miles an hour in a Z06 is done. Whereas the trip to 66 miles an hour in a V12 would be a 50% higher frequency and 2 pulls. What I did not realize at the time of purchasing was that the CSI is by a huge margin the shortest geared manual transmission car ever sold, ever. Post-war, I only looked at like 1960s and later. I did not look at, I looked at GTOs, like 250 GTO Ferraris and stuff like that, but I didn't look at like pre-war stuff. The only exception to that, the only one that comes close is that V12 Vantage 7-speed manual, which does 44 or 45 in first, depending on limited, where the rev limiter, if you're looking at redline or rev limit. The CSI does 35 in first. And more importantly, the CSI does 59 in second.
Do you need first gear?
You don't need first or second in a car with a 5.6 liter V12. But it does 59 at 6,000 in second, 63 if you extend it into the temporary overrun, because it's got a red line by gear. So you can do a 0 to 60 run you can hit 60 in second gear. But so it does 59 in second gear. The next closest car is the Aston V12 Vantage S, which does 69, 10 miles an hour more. And then from there it goes up. DB9 is 75. V12 Vantage 6-speed is 75. But you have most of the cars with V12s are high 70s.
How far back into Ferrari land did you go?
I did.
How far? How many?
Like a 330 GTC does 78 in second. A 512M 85, 512 TR 84.
Did you say you did 250 GTO?
250. I did a bunch of 250s. Where are they? 250 GTO does 71 in second. Like something like a Diablo does 66 in first and 101 in second.
That's a 5-speed.
Murcielago.
It's a 5-speed car that goes 200 miles an hour.
F50 does 87 in second. I'll put this chart online. I thought this was really interesting. Like a 400i GT does 71 in second. So all of these V12 cars, do big speeds in second gear. And then third, all of them, almost every single V12 ever made does over 100 miles an hour.
Do you include red lines in this chart? Because I think it's interesting to consider red lines, right? Because if the car does, 59 miles an hour in second gear because the red line is 5,100 RPM, which obviously is not true of the 850 CSI, but like if you were to use like a Jaguar V12 as an example where the red line is lower than, a Ferrari engine where the power peak is at, 60s Ferrari engine, the power peak is at 7,000.
Right.
So
you'll get a bigger build.
You also get higher speeds, even though you're experiencing, not necessarily more RPM consumption. It's just a reflection of the fact that the red line is lower in some engines.
So when I did a post on the V12 Vantage S when it first came out and said it was geared like a Miata because the ratios are the same, similar to a Miata, but it revved higher, and so it wound up with a higher red line, with a higher speed in each gear. But I think the most important thing is really what's that speed in each gear. Right? The GMA, the new Gordon, the T50. I'm looking at videos of people driving it. And it's over 60 miles an hour in first gear. And then they're very tightly stacked, but it's still 90 something or 100 miles an hour.
Well, that's because it goes 12,000 RPM.
Exactly. But would I rather one gear to 60 miles an hour, even if it's 12,000 RPM? I'd still rather two or three. I'd rather a bunch of shifts in normal driving. And what I don't like McLaren F1, for example, like I've never driven an F1 and I really want to, but 65 in first, 95 in second, and my phone is not letting me scroll. 65, 95, 122 in third, 150 in fourth. You're never rowing through the gears in a McLaren F1.
Not if you're using redline.
No. And redline on that car wasn't all that particularly high. It was
7,600 or 75.
It's somewhere over there. So to your point, XJ12 was a 4-speed. And it did 49 in first, 76 in second,
but the red line in that car is kind of weirdly low. I think it's 5,500 or something. Yeah.
So I did all the manuals, and this is based on I didn't fact check. This is just based on internet information. But I really love the idea that I have. One of the things that I really like about it is that you're
Had
running.
You driven one of these before you bought it?
I've driven an 850. I drove two 850i manuals, a US and a Euro.
How different is the gearing of those two cars versus
Euro
CSI?
is the same as CSI. The US 850 got long gears. And it wasn't that much longer.
And do they do this with final drive?
Yeah, it's done with final drive. There's one 6-speed for all of them. But so the Euro 850i and all of the...
This is one of those rare exceptions where the Euro car gets a shorter final drive ratio.
It happened also a lot in 993 is that way too for Europe.
And 190 Cosworth.
For fuel economy. Well, no. The US cars are shorter. Yeah, it's the other way around.
Sorry. Yeah, which is what you would historically have expected as a cobbled together solution for US motors being less powerful during the early emissions era.
Right. But yeah, you'll either get them to be shorter to make up for the additional weight and
loss of power,
or longer to get better EPA numbers, which is stupid. But yeah, very interesting. So it does 35 in first, 59 in second, 89 in third, which then led me to make obviously this little chart of all of the max speeds in second gear for each of my cars. And I love that the Rover is the longest at 66, which is incidentally first gear in any of those Lamborghinis or anything else. The Lotus comes next at 64, and that's just, a function of an 8,500 RPM engine. That was a Toyota transmission. But the Honda Beat, 43 miles an hour max speed in second gear. That's why one of the reasons that car is so riotous to drive, because I love the idea of a quick gear.
Yeah, and you see how short the Ferrari is too. I drove a Mondial T yesterday, and I was surprised again by how short the gearing is in that car.
They barely hit 60 in second. The 308 does 59.
Yeah, so the gearing was similar in that car. I think fifth gear, 70 miles an hour was 3,500.
Which sounds a lot like
it's very similar to the 308 GT4.
Yeah.
Could be the same even.
None of all the cars are, my Volkswagens hit, depends on which one it is, because I have a different transmission, the Scirocco and the Cabby now, but they were right around 60 at 7,200 RPM in second. The E30s will hit 60 right at the limiter. I think it calculates out to 59. But the Cosworth hits 62. No surprise. It's 100 kilometers an hour. The V12 is 63. It's hilarious. These are all really short gears, especially when you compare to modern, Porsches that'll do 80 or 87 or 85 in second gear. So I'm all about the build of revs and repeated shifting. And you just confessed something to me right before we hit record.
Oh, yeah. So not to be one left out of the V12 thing. To be fair, this is not truly my car. It is a company car or something. But we also acquired a V12 powered car, but we don't know anything.
Powered is a strong word from what I've heard.
It has a V12 in the engine compartment, although not for long. we got a 365 GT4 2+2, which is a shape that most people will recognize more when it's named as the 400 or 400i. But the original version of this car, there were actually 4 versions of this car. There was the 365, which was the first one, and then there is the 400 carbed, and the 400i injected, and then the 412. And they all look the same. They're kind of these big, it's the 4-seat Ferrari. It's the FF of its day. And to me, the one to get is the early one. The early one, I think, is a little cooler looking. It has 6 taillights, and it has center lock wheels with knockoffs, and it has, critically, 6 Weber side draft carburetors, which sound great when they're running, but make it very difficult to service the car because getting the airboxes out is a pain in the ass. Anyway, we sort of happened into this thing. And it looked really nice when it was covered in dust and, just needs a battery. But it had no compression on 3 cylinders, we learned after buying it. This was also after, this is mostly my co-founder, Tazio Otis, who is, a lifetime Ferrari consumer because his dad had a shop when he was born. And so he spent all his time around Ferraris. He's never owned one before. So this is his first Ferrari, yeah. His first Ferrari.
But this is certainly not going to be the first V12 he's ever had to rebuild, right?
No.
What
he's built many.
Right?
Yes, that he does it for a living, quite literally. And so, so his first one that he buys, of course, it needs a rebuild immediately.
Good.
So we've been sort of diving into this thing. It started with just pulling brakes out to get those rebuilt because the car had been sitting for a while. And then, let's put a battery in it and some fresh fuel. And then it wouldn't start. And we said, okay, let's try it with starting fluid. And all that did was external combustion, not internal combustion. I
believe there's a video of this.
No, we're not including the video.
You're not? Oh, no. Come on.
We're not. We don't post videos that are taken inside the shop if they show other people's cars. So
imagine this. So, V12 starters are the best thing in the world because they don't do the wah. They go wee. His does because it's got no compression and then goes and has a big fireball coming out the engine. It's a good video.
Yes, 2 of the 3 founders of the company set their hands on fire at various times in this adventure. This is why you don't use starting fluid. But the fact that the car wouldn't even start on starting fluid was like, okay, this is a catastrophic problem. Compression test reveals no compression on 3 cylinders, 25 PSI on the 4th cylinder,
ding,
and then like 150 or whatever it is on the other 8 cylinders. So, the hypothesis running right now is that it's deeply out of time and that, that caused some valves to make contact with pistons, which is why there's no compression on some cylinders. So
sorry to hear that.
We're about halfway through pulling the motor out of the car. We took the air boxes and carburetors and hood and part of the radiator out, part of the cooling system. So, it'll be an ongoing adventure. Not going to be ready for Car Week as we had previously hoped. So.
Oh, you have time. 2 months.
I mean, it doesn't have any brakes. We sent the brakes out to be plated.
His last name is Otis, for fuck's sake. If he can get it done if anyone can get it done for Car Week.
Yeah, it'll be lead time on like parts and machining. I think that's going to be the long
Stealing from a customer car. What kind of...
We actually do have another 365 2+2, which we are bringing to Car Week. Oh. It's going to make its public debut at some point, but it's a very, very cool car that we'll talk about at some point. I think you've seen pictures of that one.
Yes.
Suitable for Dachshund. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We're not allowed to disclose yet.
I want to drive a 365 so badly for a number of reasons. So my lifelong list of V12 manuals that I want includes an E31, a V12 Vantage S 7-speed manual, and a 365. That's it. Those are the 3 manual cars I want.
That is the car, like when you take cost into account, it is the Ferrari 12-cylinder car that I most want as well. So we're excited to have one, even if it's something of a carcass.
I went CSI because fuel injection, because I don't think I have the stomach for 10 dual throat carburetors. I have in my collection
existence.
I just don't like the 308 is 4 carbs already, and that's enough. I don't need 6 more. I'm scared of it. Put it this way, I'm scared of the maintenance of a carbureted one, and I won't do a fuel injection one because I'm sure they sound like shit.
The CIS ones are like Testarossas where they're a little bit sort of meh. Nope. You either want a carbureted one or you want a Medtronic injected or later 12-cylinder Ferrari. The CIS ones are just the kind of least inspiring.
Well, so when yours is done,
well, we have this other one that's coming, which you can have a wheel in.
I don't think I can have an Afford though.
That's true.
But I could probably, please let me drive it, please.
Yeah,
whatever.
I would be delighted. I mean, it drives a lot like this 365 GT C4. They are effectively mechanically identical, which is a better driving Ferrari Daytona. And instead of costing $600,000 or $700,000, they're like, one if it's a good one,
right,
or a lot less than one if it's a non-running one that has no motor or brakes. Or
I also love the idea that engine is the basis for the 308 engine.
Combustion chamber wise dimensions, yes.
Yeah. The sort of piston and valves and the sort of piston design. Each individual cylinder is the same, 365 versus 308. So yes, I will have to do that.
Yep, those are fabulous cars. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to
V12
talk about
updates.
Some other personal luxury coupe, I guess, is what we're the theme of today, right?
Well, it's backroad blasts, right? I mean, we did one of our famous get a bunch of friends together and spend 3 days behaving very well and doing all speed
motoring.
Limits. Yeah. Motoring very well. I need to show you all, and you, Derek, you have not seen this, a picture of the aftermath. I just walked over to Beatrice yesterday and I looked at the tire and
it looks like it's done a track day. It's purple. It's been recycled.
It's not even purple. It's
blue,
turquoise.
Yeah.
It's
the color of the Rover. The Rover's paint.
I don't know what the fuck happened. Okay, so I've never owned a set of Falcon tires before.
Oh yes, and these tires were brand new before the rally. It should be said.
And look at that image again.
They are no longer brand new.
These are the Falcon Zenith. Oh God, what are they 660 or something? Like they are like RT 660, and I keep getting confused because I have a set of RT 43s on junk wheels. RT 660s, which came highly recommended. So I bought a set. Tire rack fucking rules. I need tires for this rally. Boom, 2 seconds later they're at the house. Not sponsored, hashtag. Holy shit, they're grippy. But also, holy shit, they go greasy, which I had a moment, which I don't like having on mountain road. I was chasing you, and I said to my passenger, I'm like, I'll just catch up to him in the corners, because I can't keep up with you in the speed. And everything was fine until I turned in on this left, and there was no grip. So it was
that
quick.
Must have been illuminating.
It was 2 wheels into right off the shoulder under, but I don't like placing 2 wheels not where I want them.
Yes.
With an immediate, it was like turn in, stab the brakes, get it a little bit loose and make it around it. Don't particularly recommend those tires for savage backroads-ery. Okay. I think I'm going to go back to sticking to my Bridgestone and Michelin's if I can. But I'm sure they're fine.
Well, it looks like they were quite warm.
But are you fucking kidding me? That was
yes,
on a
I mean that's
public
not
road.
it's not the kind of temperature duty that you would get in a track environment.
Yeah, I don't know how the hell anyone tracks these. I mean, I wasn't sliding the car. Why they turned that turquoise, I don't understand, because it's not like I was sliding the car around corners. That looks like
you weren't sliding that car around corners.
No. But I was. Okay,
you were sliding something.
You were there in your GTI.
I was there in my GTI. Safe front-wheel drive Michelin 4S's.
Yes. Suffering from the same problem that Beatrice was, which is terminal understeer.
Understeer, yeah. That was an understeer day. That car needs better balance because it just lets go at the front and then you're just like,
out of options.
Out of options at that point. So maybe it's a bigger bar or, maybe tire pressure adjustment.
Call 034 and see what they recommend.
Yeah, if there's something to do that can make that car a little more neutral.
Beatrice, I went from all the other previous rallies and track days I've done had the H&R race springs on it, and I've now put the sports, which raise it up a little bit. And it went from...
And less spring rate.
And far less spring rate, especially at the rear. But I also upgraded to the big bar. So I put the E30 suspension on Beatrice, which was...
Beatrice is E30.
Spec E30. And it now has gone from an assy kind of playful thing to incredibly stable. You can get it sideways only under trail braking or huge power in second. And I'm not
huge
sure.
Power.
Well, I mean, second
huge
gear,
throttle.
Huge. 167 was huge power if you're coming from a Trabant.
Or a motorcycle.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so a little bit, a lot more stable, a little bit less fun. I preferred it before the other way. So I'm going to
some refinement on balance on both of our cars is required.
However,
there was a car that did not need any refinement and balance.
I've said for years that my Cosworth is the best balanced sedan I've ever driven in my life. And people don't really believe that a Mercedes could be perfectly balanced. And that car is really well controlled. It is an absolute pleasure. I much prefer limit driving in that to even an E30 M3, which is spectacular at the limit. We experienced a car that shows that was just de rigueur.
Yes, and it was the W116 300 SD in the Piaggio.
That was really well balanced too.
Yes. It's just baked into every Mercedes product, apparently, regardless of whether it's a C-Class or a 190 class.
Or a 560 SEC.
560 SEC. So the context on this car obviously is like, I don't know, coming to a rally and bringing an ocean liner. It's just not, what you do. But we have a friend who is really fond of bringing the wrong car to the rally. Last time, you were not on this one, but in December, we did a Saab 900. And that car, as you talked about in your Revelations episode, is sort of intended or ostensibly sporty and occupies a sporty location in the public's mind, but is not actually a sporting piece of equipment by any stretch of the imagination. And it was moist, and we were on actually that exact same road in the Saab, and it was raining and going uphill, and there's a lot of like inside one tire fire and just absurd body motions, and this is the only time I would say ever in doing this activity where I have had to pull over and stop the car because I had a stomach ache from laughing so much that I could not continue to drive. And so we get out of the car and we're just in stitches, and everyone else like, looks like you were having fun and going down the road and everything was fine. And I'm like, we're in the car, we're just dying because the car is such a riot. There's all these weird noises and turbo noises and like motions and stuff. And, it's got a 250 something thousand miles on it. And, it's a Saab. It's not a Mercedes or Porsche where 250 is kind of a lot. And so and it's got a huge hole in the back because it's a hatchback. And so there's all this noise coming from just structural, alignment changes caused by the car flexing and the hatch making all this noise. And, one of our friends said that driving that car fast sounds like taking out the recycling. It's just like clattering and like ruckus. Anyway, he brought the Saab 900 last time. Plus the Miata. He always brings two cars because he's like, here, borrow my car, and then we'll switch back and forth. And,
Smart move.
So he has the Miata, which is like the right tool for the job. And then the I don't know, the punchline car, basically, which is was the Saab last time, and this time was the 560 SEC.
So this is a C126 560 SEC, but there's a very big difference in power between the 560 motor that was sold in the US and 560 motor that was sold abroad, right?
Correct.
So the US car was like only 230.
Yeah, I think it was rated at 238 horsepower. I think. And then 227 when they put it in the SL because of exhaust system or who the hell knows what. But the most powerful version of that engine in the US was 238 horsepower and, a billion torques because it's 5.5 liters.
And the defining characteristic of a 560 car to me has always been like stupid low end torque.
Yes. That
just kind of fades away. Very much like an M100, like a 6.9 does, where it just it explodes off the line. It's comically. I mean, SLs have that huge thing where they have so much acceleration squat that you suddenly are like looking above the traffic lights and you can't see it. And they just immediately light the rear wheels on fire and go in a very comedic way. This one has the Japan or the Euro motor in it with 300 horsepower.
Yeah, so different cam timing, obviously, maybe compression ratio, emissions equipment. It's a 300 horsepower engine.
Yeah, and it pulls away exactly the same way where you're like, wow, this is crazy, and then doesn't stop pulling.
Yeah, it has the top end on it, which is, you can just imagine they designed specifically for Autobahn use where you want a lot of high-end oomph so that you can accelerate from 200 kilometers an hour to 240 kilometers an hour with minimal
leaving
effort.
all the peasants behind you.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. It's an interesting motor for me because I've driven many 560s, which are all low end, and many 500s. And the 500 motor was all
the Euro 500.
The Euro 500, which
the US 500 is a lot like the US 560.
But the Euro 500s were just all top end. You have to rev them. They don't move. And that was the car that Mike bought in 2002. It was a 500 SEC that just kind of was all right off the line, but from 4 to 5,500 or wherever, 6,000, I think Redline was. It was a monster. This
Autobahn
560 is best of both worlds. Yeah. I have a newfound respect for that engine.
It was really a treat. So yes, of course, good motor. But the thing weighs, I'm sure, I don't know, what is it, 4,000 pounds? It's an S-Class coupe. It is the biggest, honkingest, most expensivest. Maybe the SL might have been more expensive. No. Actually, I was just looking at the price card. The 560 SEC was more expensive than the 560 SL.
Yeah.
So it's the flagship car. It's very much a luxury car. And so, it's sort of tooling around at the back, and we were idly chatting. And what did you say exactly? You said something that resulted in this, where you're like, the 560 SEC could keep up. And I was like, that's absurd. That thing's on BF Goodrich radial TAs.
Which the owner, JJ, described as, he described the tires as banana peels, which made me laugh for 3 days. Just the idea of banana peels as tires.
But those tires are actually kind of good just because they're cheap, right? Everybody makes fun of them because they're just relentlessly cheap, and they've been in production since 1621, shortly after the Mayflower arrived here. The Mayflower had BF Goodrich radial TAs on it. Actually, it's a little known fact. But those tires were on your 308 when the entire duration that I owned it and when you got it. And they were very grippy. Quite good tires.
Not so much on the SEC. They did not grip so much.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it wasn't. It was less that they didn't grip and more the fucking noise that they made.
They are quite vocal.
Yeah. So, all right. So either way, I say, no problem. The 560 could keep up with you and the GTI, which let's review really quickly. Mark V race prepped GTI with a tune and a turbo.
Yeah. And springs and shocks and
huge brakes and a cage and, the whole thing. And I was told no. And so
you were like, hold my beer. And hypothetical beer, of course, because Jason does not drink.
It was hold my, I don't know, whatever. Hold my Depends undergarments, because I genuinely almost shit myself laughing. I had not one. So this is a section of the road that's all uphill, which
it is a section of Highway 1, which is one of our absolute favorites. We were
Perfectly
also delighted
paved
to find that it had been freshly repaved. Like literally, like they haven't even center striped permanently yet. It had the temporary stripes, and we're passing by the graders, which are still on the side of the road.
I haven't laughed that hard in. I don't remember the last time I laughed that hard. Actually, I do. It was that other time that we were on that other small road when you were in your 964 and I was in the Scirocco, and we got out and both like collapsed on the ground laughing.
Yes.
So in addition to driving so quickly, first of all, I kept up with you.
Yes.
You could not lose me, which was really fun. But also, especially given that I think you have far more grip in the GTI and probably far more brakes. I was trying to avoid using.
Well, fortunately, we were going uphill.
Yes, but I still had to brake for every corner because I could only catch you really in the straights. And then by the time, and I kept with you through the corners, but where you're cutting this beautiful, tidy line with absolutely no body roll.
Your only option for that car is to not be beyond the limit because it understeers. So the GTI has to have a tidy line or you're understeering.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Mercedes, I would just come in hot, 5-10 miles an hour too fast, turn and lift, and it would go into this ridiculous four-wheel drift that you could then hold at infinitum with maintenance throttle. And then as you're approaching the exit of the corner, just lay into that V8 and just leave two big stripes on the way out, catching the GTI. That was the fun part, is that on these tires, the noise, I don't think I have any video from in the car.
I definitely do. I have quite a bit.
The fucking noise that these tires were making, just to have that.
They were not singing.
No. They were squealing like a pig being murdered. But to have that noise happen with the V8 soundtrack overlaid on it while catching you on the way out of the corners was the funniest thing in the fucking world.
Yeah, I have this memory of it was, the corner is signed, I think, at 15 miles an hour. It's a hairpin, but for some reason it's on a concrete bridge. It's very wide. And all I hear is tire noise, of course. And then I'm looking in the rearview mirror and I see the 560 slide in sideways. It's a 4-wheel drift, so it's not ass out. It's just the car is doing, the car is pointed at me, but it is traveling sideways, which is the beauty I love of 4-wheel drifts generally. And this is something you see from like Le Mans footage from the 50s.
Or Goodwood now.
Yeah, but it's just, I love the look of a 4-wheel drift because the car is pointed one way, but it is traveling another way, but it's not doing it with an ass out way, which is what we're all used to seeing now. And yeah, the car just slid in sideways into picture. It was like I was looking at a TV screen and the car just slid in sideways, but all I see is the front of the car. I don't see any of the sides of the car. So that was very festive.
Everyone kept describing it like watching those old Mercedes fascination videos.
Yes, the ones that the engineering demonstration videos where they're like, here it is on a skid pad. Here we are doing terrible abuse to the car.
I mean, it's a combination of the body roll, the neutral handling, and we'll get back to that in a second, and also just the fact that it's a semi-trailing arm rear suspension, and you can watch the camber changes happen with bumps and body roll. Nautical body roll, but it never affected the car. Never pissed it off.
Yeah.
You could flick from one way to the other and it would never step out. It would just go into a 4-wheel drift.
Yeah.
That is top 3 best balanced cars I've ever driven in my life. And that includes things like 911 STs and like insert name of mid-engine car. Nothing handles like that. And if it does, it handles like that. Like it'd be like a 718. GT4 handles beautifully for the first 6 corners, and then the front tires overheat and it falls into understeer.
Yeah,
or
it'll transition between this car is it could have just done it all day long, and it never changed its attitude or behavior. The tires, I mean, I think they had so little ultimate grip that they were acting basically as the fuse in the car's handling attitude. And I don't think that always happens. A lot of cars, the tire grip drops off very precipitously, and so everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it goes away and it's not. These were so sort of like, the body roll is a big part of this, right? You get so much information on the way to the limit that you really have a great sense of how close the car is to losing grip, coupled with the audible grip reduction warning system, aka...
My passenger has maybe been sideways in a car or sliding in a car 5 times in his life. He's not, not somebody who drives like this. And so it was really interesting watching his reactions through the first couple corners. He was like grabbing onto everything, like, stabbing the imaginary brake pedal on the floor, like really. And the seats have no support whatsoever.
Or grip. Neither.
So you're trying desperately to keep yourself in thing, and he's fucking panicked. By 3 corners in, he started to relax. By 6 or 7 corners in, the laughter started.
Routine.
And it was, but I mean, I slid the thing in a 4-wheel drift around the very first corner, not realizing that I was going to be at the limit.
The limits were so low.
But the car is so communicative and so good. I just think that everyone owes it to themselves to really go slide some big old Mercedes around like that, or some Sacco era.
It was shockingly easy to do,
yeah,
and just safe and comfortable and confidence inspiring. It's an easier car to drive to the limit. I mean, the limits are lower, but also than I think sort of most overt sports cars, maybe than any other car that I've driven.
I'm trying to think if there's any. So I'm trying to compare it to something modern that has a mediocre level of grip, or sort of nothing crazy, whatever, and really good balance. And Miata comes to mind. GR86 comes to mind. GR86 I prefer to Miata in terms of body control and overall handling, but that car doesn't like to necessarily be neutral. It wants to either understeer or oversteer.
It should be noted also this car has an LSD. Which helps. Factory LSD.
Factory.
This car also had a complete suspension build recently.
With all factory stuff, right?
Yeah, one of our friends, he had been doing a transmission service right before the rally, and he looked underneath and he said, it looks like they just ordered the FCP Euro catalog and put it on the car the day before. It was all just like brand new suspension stuff. The car had some kind of lowering springs also.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And
still had that
their
roll?
Their intent was to replace them, and then after driving the car, they're like, it actually still rides like an S-Class, which it certainly over the rough stuff we were doing, handles better than anything else. Yeah. It was just such an improbable comedic thing to see the car doing that. I mean,
and keeping up with
and
your GTI is hilarious, like genuinely laugh out loud funny to follow especially in the transitions, because you'll go from max lat on a right hand turn to immediate to a left, and there is 0 visible body roll. So it looks cartoonish. It
looks like film sped up of a car driving around at normal speeds.
And you watch like little kids laugh. I love watching little kids laugh at improbable physics. When they see something that doesn't make sense, they giggle. And that's we all had the same reaction watching your GTI because it's like la 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 doink, and it goes the other way. You just want this little like Jake, you're gonna have to make that doink sound effect. Doink. But it just pew goes this way, pew goes that way, and it's so grippy and so easily manageable that you're a 10/10 in that car, and to be able to keep up but have the opposite experience.
Yes, just max drama.
Yeah.
Visual drama though, but they're not in the car. In the car.
Were you really slow?
When you drove like drama, that drama that you have, not spooky, sketchy drama, I should say. Yeah. I don't consider it truly drama unless you're scared.
True. I wasn't scared. There was one huge downhill straightaway where you kept your foot in it, and I could smell when your car got hot. I don't know. This might have been when the check engine light came on, but my theory was, his engine's getting hot now because I smell a really rich mixture. Mm-hmm. So I said to my passenger,
this was after that stupid fucking Tesla that failed to yield.
Okay, sure.
For many minutes.
For many minutes.
Anyway, I was disposing.
You were tear-assing down the hill, and I kept up with you in the SEC, and then I thought, wait a second, we are now doing 26 miles an hour, and I'm going to have to shave off 22 of those miles an hour, definitely.
No, the speed limit on this road is 55.
Yeah, not 120. No, I mean,
kilometers.
It was probably 100 something
kilometers.
Kilometers, yeah. And so shaving off speed, it was a long braking distance, and this is at the end of, I don't know, how long was that run? 10 miles, 12 miles of flat out? I thought, let me just get on the brakes really early. And at the end of the braking zone, did smell the brakes. Pedal started to get a little bit long in the middle of the braking zone. I smelled it. I'm like, okay, backing off right now. 2 corners later, pedal was back where it wanted to be, and I was completely sideways again. But all of this led us to just get out of the car at the bottom of the hill and say, you know what? The best thing you could ever do is the wrong car on the right road.
Yes. Yeah, I mean the comedic effect, and the Saab 900 story supports that. You know, they were a wrong car in different ways, but driving something that has no business being hustled in that way, as long as it's something that is entertaining and doesn't just completely dynamically wilt in a way that is like frustrating. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that in an SUV. Obviously, like in an old style SUV.
No, God, no.
Like the kind of, like with live axle. Yeah, like you wouldn't do that. But something that is like a sort of pleasant surprise where you get this massive entertainment factor. And, then after everyone sees what the car is capable of doing pace-wise, everyone's like, okay, I'm going to go try and do that. And then it's so easy and accessible and entertaining and just comedic as well.
So if I think about, after we do the Revelations episodes here, we drive up a hill and that, excuse me, I just burped.
Congratulations.
That's disgusting. The section that always makes it in the video is just, it's like a 1.5 mile hill climb basically. And if I think back to the most fun I've ever had, Tourist Show was one of the funnest ones because it was on, it's a Chinese tire brand, Linglong. It was on Linglong tires.
That is a brand.
That is a brand, yeah. It was on Linglongs, and it was like, I think it was Memorial Day weekend. It was a holiday weekend, and I got up at 4:30 in the morning, got to the studio at 5, and just did the run up the hill when there was no one around, and laid tire the entire way up the hill. It was hilarious.
But only one at a time, always the inside.
Always the inside. Then I did it again in the Subaru XT, which was front wheel drive XT, and it had the worst axle hop I've ever felt in my life. Well, of course, I have to put a clip in it because the dash fell apart while I was driving it, and vents fell out, whatever. It was just horribly abusive, just watching the whole interior rattle around. Those two were both the most fun I've ever had. And my favorite part is hearing Esposito lose his shit laughing when he's like trying to be quiet because, we record audio. But those are both one-dimensional abusive. Like I wouldn't have done that to anyone else's XT if it wasn't. Both of those cars actually
belong to the same person who owns the 300 SD, which we also mortally abused, and then sold for some substantial number of dollars on Bring a Trailer afterwards. Did you see that car sold for $20,000 after on Bring a Trailer?
It did?
Yes.
The
after
SD?
the big episode, yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it sold for 20 grand on Bring a Trailer.
Okay, it was a nice car. That's hilarious. I had no idea.
It was the film Provenance.
Yes. Did he mention it in the?
I think it came up in the comment section. Yes.
Oh, that's
someone
hilarious.
posted a link.
I didn't know he was going to sell it. But yeah, no, he's a complete goon, and so he allows this stuff. But I wouldn't have done that to most cars, right? The thing about that S class or the SEC was that it was even more fun than that because it was so brilliant dynamically. It wasn't just one-dimensional understeer.
Yeah, it wasn't just improbability that was causing laughter. It was actually genuine enjoyment.
And it wasn't abusive.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing we did to that car. Yeah. So long as you don't consider sliding around a corner abusive, and I don't. It was, I will never forget that run. Yeah. I want to go back and do it again.
It makes you think that, man, all of these heretofore unknown superb road rally cars that we've been missing out on.
I mean, look, Beatrice is kind of the perfect solution because it's short geared, it's loud, it handles really well. It's got good brakes, which I really enjoy, and good ABS, which on roads like that, I want. And it's cheap and, and hopefully safe if anything, God forbid, ever happens.
And fairly disposable with the cosmetic condition and salvage title.
Exactly. But no contest. That Mercedes is.
Yeah. Just an absolute laugh until we got to the gas station and calculated the fuel economy.
It's 12?
No, 10.4.
10.4. No.
Yes.
Whatever. I mean,
it's worth it.
It's not like you were getting that much better gas. We did a fuel economy challenge.
23,
which is
in the GTI.
Was that your overall, including like transit stages and stuff?
It was for the same duration.
Oh, okay.
Right. We did the AB where we fueled all the cars up at the same place and then fueled.
Hold on. So that was the 10.4, but we didn't have much transit on that, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because I think Beatrice averaged. So we did. We probably have all the numbers. You won with the best fuel economy at 20.
Surprising, given there was an NA Miata there.
Right.
And
but it used more. Beatrice was in second place at 21 and change, I think. Almost tied with the Z3 2.8. And the Miata used a lot. But I bet the Miata also used a gallon of oil.
Yes.
Because that Miata's a little bit thirsty.
Yes, it is.
A little smoky.
It's a two-stroke. It's a two-stroke, four-stroke. But yeah, I mean, I guess so what is this? A testament to the quality of the engineering that Mercedes-Benz puts in every car? I think it's just so absurd. You watch the videos of them in period doing the development of these cars. You're like, this looks so absurd. And they always have these videos that I don't even know what they made those videos for. They're all on YouTube now. But, where they displayed.
So you can find them on YouTube if you search for Faszination in German, Faszina.
Yeah, and they do it for every generation of car, basically from the 70s onward. They do it for trucks also, which is pretty hilarious.
Watching the huge double-decker buses do slaloms and shit.
Yes. Great. Or do ABS testing. And here's the one that doesn't have ABS, and it's just going through like a field of cones. So, yeah, I mean, this is the underlying quality of engineering that sort of underpins the statement of the best engineered car in the world.
So the other thing that we did, what I thought was interesting, is add up our purchase price, collective cumulative purchase price of every car there, and found that every one of us combined, what we paid for our car didn't match the GR Corolla that was there.
Yes, the GR Corolla was also present.
And this is,
and we're not talking about that from our rally or seat time and driving the GR Corolla. We're talking about the Mercedes instead.
Well, I'd like for you to talk about GR Corolla because this is the first time you've driven one, right?
Yes, I've driven a couple Yaris's, but never driven the GR Corolla. It is very fast over the road, and for a modern car, has a lot of texture and character, but the quotient of entertainment was far lower than almost anything else that was present. Except possibly the GTI. The GTI makes all these kind of weird noises and has this sort of lack of refinement that gives it some texture. The GR Corolla highlights why modern cars, I think, are just not as good as old cars. It was just, even though it is one of the most exciting new cars you can buy, compared to all of our, we added up the numbers of all these cars. The owner of the GR Corolla paid $2,000 under MSRP. He didn't pay some absurd markup for the car. He bought it, lightly used and got it slightly under MSRP. And so why? I mean, if it's your only car, it makes a ton of sense. He bought it specifically to use as a commuter because he has the FD3 RX-7 that was in your Revelations episode, and he has an NC Miata Club.
That was in one of our previous NC versus ND episode, one Miata.
Yeah, so he has those two, which are both sort of like not refined commuters, and he has kind of an unpleasant, gnarly commute. So he said, "Let me buy." And he wants to go to. Gets a ski lease every winter, so he wants something with 4-wheel drive that also works as a commuter, that's modern, isn't going to break down when it's 21 degrees when he's driving up Friday night to go skiing.
And he made the right choice.
Yes.
So let's make it very, very clear.
It is absolutely
yeah.
the right
and
tool.
I think the GR Corolla is a great car. But the reason I asked this is because I had a feeling this was going to be your answer, right? And if for anyone listening who's like, "Oh, Derek's just an old car snob," no. So I drove the GR as well there, and in the context of new cars, it's fun and charming and just quirky and it's bulldogish and whatever. Next to everything else, it looked like a big fat pig. That was the crazy thing. It just looked so bloated and so tall.
Dynamically, of course, that's not the case.
No. But it on a if the Mercedes was a 10 on the fun scale, and Beatrice's maybe was an 8, and the GTI was a 7, the GR was a 3.
I would give it slightly more than that, but the joy.
I didn't haul ass.
The joy in that car. Yeah, I was just about to say, actually, quite literally, was the joy of that car is just the pleasure of going quickly over road and getting places, fast and fun, therefore fun, fast, therefore fun, which is not my favorite type of fun to have.
Right.
But, you get some value out of just going over some section of road absurdly fast, especially when there are other sort of reference point cars around to sort of hang out with. But it's not intrinsic fun. And I think there's a difference between sort of like fun that comes from fast and fun that comes from like intrinsic entertainment factor, sort of divorced from fast.
That is my 4 rating, right? Would I choose to daily a GR Corolla? Absolutely. And then would I have fun on a back road? For sure.
Yes.
But I just think
in
that
case
context,
of emergency. I always imagine that is like, in case of emergency, you're like out commuting and all of a sudden you're like, amazing section of road. There's 4 corners, I got to use them, or off ramp or on ramp that needs dispatching, or, you want to surprise. I like doing this in, again, Mercedes-Benzes, because I daily some Mercedes-Benz generally. And if there's some situation with an off-ramp where people are just like, no, it's a 30-year-old Mercedes, it's going to just be in the way. And then you drive away from someone in a Miata who isn't expecting, and then they're on the back foot and they're not in the power curve and they're in 3rd gear already when they really needed to be at the top of 1st, then it's very fun. Yeah. But, so in case of emergency, the car has funness and that is accessible, but it is not like... It's not the sense of occasion that makes you get up super early on a weekend and specifically to go rally if you have a multi-car solution. But great all-rounder.
Great all-rounder, absolutely, yeah. I thought you were going to get out of it when we got to the end of this one stretch of road, because you were moving in that thing.
And I didn't feel like it.
You were another gear higher. So than you were. So I was behind you in the E30, and I remarked out loud, notice that we're 3rd and 4th, where we're typically 2nd and 3rd over here. You were moving, and it was kind of everything.
I didn't feel like I was moving. It was just like, every time I looked down at the speedometer, I was like, "Eey!"
Yeah. So I thought you were going to get out and say, well, it's far more capable than I expected, but far less interesting or far less fizzy.
The other funny thing that happened is I think I had just finished a very spirited section in the 560 SEC, and I immediately get in the Corolla and understeer through like the 3rd corner because there was no like just acoustic warning system and body roll to sort of indicate that the limit was there. And so I just immediately was like overcooked something because I was calibrated to all of this sort of progressive warnings. It's like phases of grief, right? That you go through. There's like phases of like approaching the limit in the Mercedes, which were not present in a car that has better body control, whether it's the GTI or the Corolla GR.
Yeah, I love that GR Corolla, but I think it's really important in a world where all of the modern stuff. So it's my job to review a lot of modern cars, and I've been bad at it recently. I haven't done a lot of press car rotations at home. I want to enjoy my own cars. And I think it's really important if you're listening to somebody who's reviewing modern cars to look and see what their reference points and reference points are, because
the standard by which you judge fun. Right? If you judge the standards of fun against exclusively modern cars, the Corolla GR is a riot.
Absolutely. But it can't even come close to something like an old S-Class. And that was the reason I brought it back up. It's just not even, it's different leagues. I would so much rather drive that old Mercedes fast than the Corolla, just for the purpose of
I thought it was just going to be a mess.
I thought it was going to be terrible.
It was going to be a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was just going to be overheating. A temp gauge never fucking moved.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be
the engine and the brakes.
Yeah, and the brakes. I thought it was going to be miserable. I thought it was going to understeer. But man, that is technically the right car for any back road.
I want to do it just so that, like, I love the comedic factor, right? Going places, and it has no, in that context, you talk about Uberhold prestige, where on those types of roads, you need to haul up behind someone in a sports car that looks intimidating. They're like, oh, these guys are going to go fast. I got to get out of their way. The car has none of that. Right? You turn up in an old S-Class.
I mean, if you came up with like really bright headlights on, like high beams on, just to get their attention, because no one's ever looking behind them on these roads, and see that, I would wonder what I've done wrong in my life. Like, what is that? Oh, it's leaning over at 45 degrees. Why are they on my ass? Am I the problem? Maybe that'll teach some people to move the fuck out of the way.
Credit.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's just terrifying, sure, to see that. You're just like, that person is clearly going to kill someone. I should get out of the way because I don't want it to be me.
Yeah. Meanwhile, that was, did not, for what, 10, 12, 14 miles. I have no idea how long that stretch of road is. Completely at 11/10 every single corner. Not once did I have an even close to a whoops
misbehavior
moment, or like, oh, the car didn't react the way I wanted. It was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
who would have thunk it?
Certainly not me. Yeah. And even coming from a world where I say Mercedes stuff was always, neutral and whatever. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the long and short of this is, other than that we are continuing to learn.
Go buy an old Mercedes. I mean, they're just fucking. There's a reason. Even when you push them completely outside of their.
I have bought an old Mercedes. I bought it. You're talking to other people. You're not.
Yeah, other people. Yeah, not you.
Yeah.
Put good factory suspension on a floppy old Mercedes, and it still will outfun your $40,000 modern hot hatch, $50,000 modern hot hatch. So that's it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Carmudgeon Show. We will see you next week, where we're doing something a little bit different.
What, we're going to wear the Viper chairs on our head? Don't forget, Haggerty coupon code for $50 off.
Oh, you don't want to side post next week's episode at all? Okay, that's fine. Everyone will see what it is when we do it.
Maybe we don't do it. Maybe it won't work. Maybe we'll get
You're right.
arrested.
Maybe we have to shit can all of the footage and we can't.
Don't tell them.
Okay.